Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is James and today we're going to be talking about the top 10 biggest disappointments of 2023. Hello, I hope that you all had a really great New Year's. I was not able to upload this earlier because I was on a trip to see some old friends, but I'm here now to talk about the biggest disappointments in 2023, and there were quite a few. Now, while I really enjoyed a lot of movies from this year, there were a lot of movies that were hidden gems that were massive surprises. There were a ton of disappointments this year. Usually I have trouble putting together like a top 10. This year I had like a top 20, or there were a lot of movies that disappointed me this year. So before I begin, let me know your top 10 most disappointing movies of the year down in the comments. Which movies did you expect to be like up here and they ended up more around like down here, like down here. They let you down. Let me know and let's get started. Coming in at number 10 is a little movie called Sick. Now, this seems to be on a lot of people's most surprising or hidden gems list of the year. And to me, it's one of the most disappointing movies of the year. This is a movie that is written by Kevin Williamson, the guy that wrote Scream, and it is a COVID slasher. And so this was a movie where it had premiered at a lot of different Fantastic Fest. It got good buzz, but not great buzz. But then after that, it seemed like it was getting really great reviews. I didn't see this film until like March or like April. But by the time I'd seen it, it had like an 87% on Rotten Tomatoes, really great reviewed, and it was a Peacock original. So I went and watched this movie expecting it to be pretty good, and what I got was a average at best slasher. It is the first about 15-20 minutes are COVID stuff where it has some fun commentary on how overreactive a lot of people were, where if you coughed, everyone would look at you like you had the flu or something, like you were like a danger to society. It was the funniest thing, and that happened to me a bunch. But for me, and the third act especially has a lot of commentary, but for me, the entire middle of this film, from about middle like 45, 50 minutes, is the most generic slasher thriller chase movie I've seen all year, where it's a movie about these killers chasing this girl through the woods, trying to kill her. And it's so generic. There's a lot of really big logic issues where, especially there's a scene on a lake which makes no sense. There's other scenes in the beginning where there's a guy gets trapped in his apartment. He's stuck in a room, but he's safe. He hasn't been hurt too badly. He's safe, and the killer makes it sound like he left, and he decides to leave this room that he can't get into from any other way, leave the room, and in the process he dies. And so it's a film that could have been a lot better, and it ended up just being generic. Not bad in anywhere, it's like a 3 out of 5, but I thought it could have been much better. So coming in at number 10, Sick. At number 9 is Insidious: The Red Door, or as a lot of people are calling it, The Red Snore. This was a movie that I was very curious about because it's directed by Patrick Wilson. It's a immediate follow-up to Insidious Chapter 1 and 2. I love Insidious Chapter 1, but I was always hesitant towards this, but then I really enjoyed the trailers. It looked like the best of the Insidious stuff. It looked like more Insidious, but it didn't look like bad Insidious. And I was really curious about Patrick Wilson directing this movie, this being his directorial debut. I thought, and then as it came along, I watched the film, and it's not bad. It's not terrible, but it's just super forgettable and unnecessary. Where it's a movie where the entire first 85 minutes is them building up to a reveal that we already know, where the dad and the son, played by Tyson Kins and Patrick Wilson, they're great in this movie, they're the best parts of the movie, it's building up to a twist where they're trying to figure out what really happened in this part of their life that has kind of dismantled both their lives, caused a divorce, their family is separated. What caused that? But we saw the first two movies, so we know what happens to these characters. We know what happens, so it's not a mystery to us. And so for the first 85 minutes of the movie, it's just so boring, where almost nothing is happening. From there, when you get into the third act, it feels like it's going through like that. It feels rushed. It feels like there's an extra 10 or 20 minutes that were left in the film that they just left on the cutting room floor, and that 10 minutes is needed because there's once again logic issues. There's major gaps in time where it just doesn't it feels rushed. And so it's very well directed. I think Patrick Wilson sets up the scares really well, especially the one where he's in the little MRI scan thing. And I like the two performances from Ty Simpkins and Patrick Wilson. But it's just a generic movie, and it should have been a lot better. And I find it feels like a cash grab. So number 9, Insidious: The Red Door. At number 8 is Big George Foreman, and this is a movie that no one saw. I don't even know if it made $5 million at the box office. It didn't get great reviews, and so I saw the trailer for this, and when I heard that they were making a movie about Big George Foreman, one of the most interesting boxers to ever live, I got really excited about it, and I was hoping that this would be one of these films that's 2.5 hours plus of telling the full story of this guy's life, of what he was really like, his journey. I would have liked to have seen more development into like the church world idea and his younger life and all this stuff. And to me, when I watched the film, it felt like a best of Big George Foreman's life, where it takes Forrest Whitaker and it brings him in as the coach, and that feels rushed. It feels rushed. It's a movie that's just over 2 hours, but it could have easily been 2.5 hours, or I'll go as far as 3 hours. It's a film where it basically completely skims over his younger life. It feels like there's no build up to anything. There's a certain moment in the film where he says he wants to go to the Olympics, and then one scene later, he's there, and then that scene quickly ends, and he moves on to being champion. And then he fights Ollie, and then he moves to church for about 15 minutes, and then he goes and fights a little bit more to get money, and he makes a bunch of money, and he becomes a boxer again, and then he goes back to church world. It's just super generic. It's a movie that feels like it's cut down to the minimum amount, and it's like this movie didn't make much money anyway, so why not just make it a better movie? Once again, not a bad movie. It's like a 3-star, but it is one of the most rushed movies and one of the movies that had the most potential on this list to be great, but didn't live up to those expectations. And it's the most forgettable movie of the year. Number 8, Big George Foreman. Number 7 is Expendables 4. This was in my top 10 worst movies of the year. And I already talked about this movie, so I'll kind of talk through this one quickly. I didn't like this movie. This is a movie where it kind of abandons everything that made the first 2 great, which are its practical stunts. It's actually them blowing up buildings, shooting real guns, real explosions, real hand-to-hand fight choreography. And this film was filmed in a warehouse in Portugal, and it primarily takes place on a ship. And so it's just green screen the entire time. It looks bad. It just doesn't. It rings hollow of anything that it could have been. Most of the points get taken away for not being practical, not living up to what the previous 3 were. I wasn't a big fan of 3, but at least they got the practical stunts right. This movie couldn't even do that. Sylvester Stallone's barely in the movie for some reason, and it just becomes a bad Jason Statham action movie. There's nothing more to say about it. I've already talked about it in my worst movies of the year list. Go watch that if you want my 4 more in-depth thoughts. But number 7, Expendables 4, should have been way better. Number 6 is Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. This was never a movie that I was terribly excited for. To be honest with you, ever since 2019, I haven't been really excited for a lot of these comic movie MCU movies. But the thing that always got me curious was Jonathan Majors and Kang, and why did they make Ant-Man the kickoff to the new phase of the MCU that's going to be setting up the big bad of the MCU? And that got me curious. Wasn't a big fan of the first trailer, so I was expecting like a 3.5 out of 5. Second trailer came around, loved it. It teased big stakes and like tons of action and actually punishments that Scott Lang would have to endeavor. And when I watched the movie, it had none of that. This is, to me, in conversation for the worst movie in the MCU. I do not think that it's good really on any level. I think the story is rushed. It feels like it takes place within like an hour or two in the actual movie, where just stuff kind of happens. I like Hope. Hope's mom in this movie, Janet Van Dyne in this movie. She's one of the better parts of this film. I think that Jonathan Majors does well with what he's given, but he's not given much. And this is a movie that has some really bad dialogue, really terrible humor. Nothing in this movie made me laugh. And it's just a movie where it reminded me that the MCU has gone far off course from their old greatness. And this was a early sign that 2023 was not going to be the box office year that we really expected it would be. And it's even more disappointing that we're not going to get to see Jonathan Majors as Kang. And the biggest disappointment of this film was that they didn't actually do anything serious. There were no repercussions. There's nothing at the end where like Scott could have gotten stuck in the quantum realm, or Hope could have died, he could have died, something big should have happened. But no, it just ends, and it's another generic, bad comic book movie from this year. Really disappointing. Should have been a lot better. Could have been a lot better with how this could have been set up. But number 6, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. At number 5 is 65. I once again talked about this in my worst of the year list, so I won't talk about it for too long. This was a slog of a movie for me. I thought that it was boring. I thought that it had a lot of potential for being a fun action movie about Adam Driver shooting ray guns at dinosaurs, and it just became a very generic and dull point A to point B movie where they're trying to get to one place to another before a timer kind of runs out. The dinosaur action isn't very interesting. Whenever it gets there, it feels like it wraps up really quickly. It's an hour and a half long, but it feels like it's 2.5 hours. I fell asleep in this movie because I wasn't feeling very good. I was watching it because I was not feeling great in the summer. Fell asleep about 50 minutes in and paused it. Fell asleep because I never like to leave movies on while I'm sleeping. Paused it about 50 minutes in. Next day, came and started about 40 minutes in and watched the rest of it. Didn't get any better than it was. This movie is one of the worst movies of the year. It's one of the biggest disappointments of the year. Should have been so much better. Number 5, 65. Number 4 is Scream 6. Now, out of any of these movies, this is easily the best of them. And this is a movie where I was really excited for. I loved Scream from 2022, Scream 5. I thought it was great. It is, to me, easily the best Scream sequel. It's one of the better legacy sequels that we've gotten in recent memory. And so I was really excited for this movie. I thought all the trailers were great. And for about, 75% of the movie, I was really digging it. And then as we got close to the end of the second act, it started to fall off a bit. And then the third act to me goes off the rails. To me, the first hour and 35, hour 30 to hour and 40 is easily the best Scream sequel. It would have been probably in my top 10 of the year, easily, probably number 7-ish. And then the final 20 minutes is like a massive steam pile of shit. I think that it is just, once again, goes in a more generic route of they were doing stuff that was so different for the Scream franchise. You reveal the killer in the beginning and then you kill him. That's the actual beginning kill. You've got it in a new setting. I liked all the settings. And I liked the situations. And then it just becomes another generic slasher generic mask reveal where we have all these face reveals and we know who they are. I predicted 2 of the killers from as soon as I saw them. The third killer I didn't predict because it seemed like they were dead. And there's no way you could predict that character, so it makes no sense. And then from there, it just goes into logic issues, major logic gaps where people get stabbed tons of times. Chad's character gets his arms pulled back, and he's stabbed over and over and over and over and over again by these 2 ghost faces. Minimum a dozen stabs in his chest. and he's still alive by the end. People get stabbed multiple times in the stomach, still alive. People get shot, still alive. Multiple times shot. People get bricks smashed over their head and they're fine. They get stabbed in the head and they're fine. They get stabbed. They fall from major points and they're fine, and they get stabbed onto knives and they're fine, and they walk away. It's just a movie where the last third of this movie just tanked. And, it's even more disappointing that we're never going to get to continue these characters. Scream 7 probably isn't going to happen, especially with the Carpenter sisters. And so that just adds to the disappointment, where I suspect as time goes on, I'm going to like this movie less and less. It's a 3.75 out of 5. I tried to do a review, but it was just too long. So, number 4, best movie on this list, but also one of the biggest disappointments of the year, Scream 6. Kicking off the top 3 is Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. I put a review out for this back in when it came out, and I also put a review out for a video essay explaining why I love Indiana Jones before this movie came out. And to me, this movie was just incredibly generic. This was a movie where I walked in with sky-high expectations. I was expecting this to be one of the biggest movies of the year, the Top Gun Maverick of the year. It seemed like it was setting itself up for that. It was releasing in the summertime. It was premiering at Cannes Film Festival. It looked like it had all this hype going around it. Everyone that I talked to said that it was going to be massive, and I agreed. I was saying this was going to be the biggest movie of the year. And everyone that I talked to was agreeing with me. The trailers were awesome. And then the reviews came out, and they were very middling. And then this movie just lost all interest with everyone else. So I went in expecting to just barely like it. And I came out a little more high on it, because it's the last time I'll ever get to see Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones. And so I gave it like a 3.75 out of 5. I would drop that now to around like a 3.25 out of 5. It's okay. This movie I don't think is going to age very well with time, where King and Crystal Skull is a movie that I don't like, but it's like a 2.75 out of 5, but at least it's memorable. Like, there's things that are memorable in that. I can tell you specific sequences. Apart from the opening sequence and a couple emotional beats in this film, in Indiana Jones and Dial of Destiny, there's nothing that I can tell you I remember from this movie. It's generic from start to finish, where you just kind of watch something that you don't really want to watch, which is Indiana Jones being deconstructed, where his son dies off screen. Marianne has abandoned him again, and then they get together again, just like kind of they did at the end of King and Crystal Skull. I find it very strange that they didn't have Short Round in this film. And the biggest thing against this movie is Phoebe Waller-Bridge. I have nothing against her as a person. I don't really know her that well. But she wasn't written very well in this movie, where she's kind of putting him down. She's literally locking him up like in a room with a bunch of bad guys that have guns that are going to kill him, and they prove that they're willing to kill anyone because they kill an innocent school teacher. Like, she abandons him and leaves him die. She's pushing him around and bullying him, and he's just trying to help her. She's making jokes after one of his best friends was just killed. So this is a movie where it's not bad to me, but it's one of these movies where, as time has gone on, it's just super generic, and it should have been and probably could have been so much better than it was. And I don't get where it went wrong. All I know is that it did. And so this is one of the bigger disappointments of the year. I originally was meaning to call my Indiana Jones review a short review, but I had so much to talk about because I was so conflicted on it that I just called it a review. It's almost 10 minutes long, and usually my short reviews are like 5 minutes. Really disappointing. I wish it could have been better. Could have been better. Number 3, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. My runner-up for most disappointing movie of the year is Napoleon. I talked about this in my worst movies of the year. I was really disappointed by this film. Put it on record, Ridley Scott is my top 10 favorite directors of all time. I absolutely love him. Alien is in my top 20 movies of all time. Gladiator is in my top 30 movies of all time. Blade Runner is in my top 50 movies of all time. I love this guy. This guy is one of the best visionary filmmakers of all time. He's wonderful. But over the last 10 to 15 years, he's had a lot of hit and misses, where he had The Martian, he had Alien Covenant, that I both loved, but Then he had Prometheus, which I wasn't big on. He had like Body of Lies, which I wasn't big on. He had like The House of Gucci, which was not very good. He had The Last Duel, which was not great. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't great. He had All the Money in the World, which was okay. He's had a rocky road for a little bit now. But I was really excited about this film because it has one of the best actors of the last 20 years. It's got one of the best directors of all time working on it. And while on a technical level, like the visual effects, the sound, the cinematography, the production design, especially the costume design, I thought were all immaculate. I thought the movie itself was an absolute mess when it came to this story, where events just happen with no real explanation, where certain things happen that kind of just, like, events happen, like massive battles with other countries, then they team up, Napoleon teams up with that country, and then 2 scenes later in a line of exposition he says, oh yeah, we're going to fight them now, he's betrayed me. And so there's no through line. It feels like certain scenes were just taken out. There's an actor in the end of the film who's the general of the British Army, it feels like he's meant to be the main villain of the movie, and he's in it for about 15 minutes. There's some very odd comedy beats in this movie where he it just is so odd, like certain sex scenes that are just some scenes are meant to be funny and those scenes aren't, but then all the scenes that aren't meant to be funny are like there's, and then like, so like all the like intentionally funny bits of like him falling down the stairs, I was just like rolling my eyes at whenever he's making pig noises and horse noises when he's about to bang Vanessa Kirby. It just feels weird, and she saves the movie. She's incredible. I think that she should be in competition for Best Supporting Actress nominations for the Academy Awards, but yeah, this movie it felt very jumbled. It felt like there was some very odd humor, and so it could have been a lot better. I really hope that Gladiator 2 is better than this, but as of right now, this movie has lost a lot of excitement for me for his next few movies, so my runner-up is Napoleon. But my biggest disappointment of the year was undeniable, and that is Rebel Moon Part 1, A Child of Fire. I was out of the world excited for this movie. At the beginning of the year, I was predicting this was going to be my top 5 favorite movies of the year, minimum top 10. I was saying this is going to be Zack Snyder's masterpiece. This is going to be the movie that transcends the sci-fi genre. Like, I thought a lot of sci-fi movies this year, like Dune, The Creator, a lot of other movies. I thought all the trailers were awesome. It was giving me exactly what I wanted, and I was really excited that I was going to Netflix, because Netflix is a streaming service, so he can make it as long as he wants, and he can make his vision of Star Wars rated R. He basically has full freedom, and what we got was a trimmed down mess of a film that to me was just lacked anything interesting. I'll say that the world they set up is interesting enough where maybe I'll check out part 2, maybe, but it is completely rushed. I would not be shocked if this film was actually like 3.5 hours long, and it feels like Netflix is trying to kind of recreate the Snyder Cut fandom event where they just call for the Snyder Cut, get all this hype, and then part 2 is a massive hit. The only interesting character in this movie was the robot, and it felt like his story was absolutely rushed through. Throughout the movie, everything just feels rushed. It feels like every other scene, there's just every scene, there's in between scenes, there's like a different scene that's taken out. So the phone is the scene, and then it's just taken out. So that's the character development. This is the introduction. This is the conclusion of this little section of the film, and the building part, which is the phone, taken out. And so it's just a rushed mess of a movie where I can't even tell you any of the characters' names. They go on and they show up for about 5 minutes, and they do a cool action sequence thing where they ride like a flying beast, or they fight like a spider lady with basically lightsabers, or they have a shootout or something. And then they kind of stand in the background, kind of just not saying anything. And it just does that. It does that like 4 or 5, maybe even 6 times to the point where by the third act, you get a character that is introduced that's played by Ray Fisher, who played Cyborg in Justice League. And he's totally forgettable. Like, I can't tell you his name. Like, and there's a scene in the end where a certain character dies and does that slow-mo thing of them falling to their death. It's supposed to be this moment of, like, loss. And I don't even know this guy. He showed up like 20 minutes before he died. And so there's no development of the characters. The movie's rushed from beginning to end. It's not conclusive in any way. The third act, while is maybe the best part of the movie, it is rushed as all hell. The visual effects are great. Sophia Boutella is pretty awesome. And I'm curious in the world that they set up. It's just a movie that is just so rushed. It's just blatantly cut and neutered down. There's scenes where people are shot at and then or stabbed, and it cuts away when it's very clear there's going to be massive blood spurt, and it takes away from the effect of the movie and the scene. It's the third act, the final battle is like very rushed, where it's supposed to be this like big triumphant moment, and you feel nothing. And it's a movie where the biggest thing was it's trying to set up this massive world, but then it's trying to bring it into a very small scale of them just protecting a village. Where, go bigger. You've set up a world that's big. Go bigger. So this is no doubt the biggest disappointment of the year. This is a movie I've talked about the most on this list in this recording, because it's just so frustrating, and it's killed all interest for this universe that they're setting up. I don't even know if I'm going to watch part 2, but to me, this was one of my least favorite movies of the year, and it's easily the biggest disappointment of the year. So, thank you guys for watching. Please tell me your most disappointing movies of the year in the comments below. And as always, I'll see you on the other side. Bye.